Senator Markey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for this very important hearing. Although it was a nor'easter that delivered the perfect storm, Massachusetts is not immune to hurricanes. We saw effects from Hurricane Noel in 2007, Hurricane Earl in 2010, and Hurricane Irene in 2011. Storms that begin off the coast of Africa, travel across the Atlantic, hang a right, and sometimes find themselves in New England. And if they're anything like Boston drivers, they do so without a turn signal. That's what we get hit with. But with the National Hurricane Center at the wheel, we have the best science and technology to predict where the storms are going to go, and you are our needed turn signal, and we thank you for that. But there is still room to improve. There are still many questions about hurricanes. Answers to them will enhance the prediction of track intensity and when a storm may transition into extra tropical system, one that is powered by differences in atmospheric temperatures rather than ocean temperatures that drive hurricanes. One of the big questions remaining is, what will hurricanes look like in a warmer world? Scientists expect stronger storms with a higher frequency of the most intense storms and heavier rainfall. And in addition, sea level rise will enhance the threat from coastal storms and flooding. And while hurricanes are sometimes such that we can only predict and prepare for them, we can do something to steer the path of climate change, and we must do that. Now, that's of concern to us because of all the places on the planet, the entire planet, it's the sea surface temperatures off of New England which are warming faster than any place else on Earth. As temperatures continue to warm along the mid-Atlantic and New England coast, how might the northern extent of these storms change, Doctor?
Certainly, there's a lot that we know about how the climate has changed up to this point. It is rather uncertain how much the numbers and strengths of hurricanes have changed in the decades prior to now, leading up to now, mainly because we haven't had current monitoring tools as long as people might think. We've only had the satellites for half a century, aircraft reconnaissance since the 1940s. And then looking forward, there still remains a lot of uncertainty with regard to what will change in terms of the numbers and strengths of hurricanes.
So especially the kinds of storms that lose strength as they head north, what could it mean in the future as our ocean gets warmer and warmer in terms of the intensity of these storms further north as they get that extra fuel out of the ocean?
We have many, many events in the northeastern U.S. to point to in the last many decades to show it's a relatively frequent occurrence to have systems, major hurricanes moving north and then having tremendous impacts up in the northeast. In fact, one of these days, Senator Rubio, we're going to start having hurricanes in Florida like they do up in the northeast. We had them hitting the northeast with quite a bit of frequency the last few years. The main concern I have with regard to how hurricane impacts are going to change in the future, and many cities and states in the northeast are no exception, is that even if the numbers and strengths of hurricanes don't change, and even if the behavior of the storms that move up the East Coast and into the Northeast don't change, the potential for rising sea levels, the increased populations, increased infrastructure, I'm really worried about increased impacts from storm surge, from heavy rainfall, and that, to me, is the biggest challenge that we face in coastal regions over the years and decades to come.
Right. When we had that huge 111-inch snowstorm last winter, a series of snowstorms just came week after week, they were measuring temperatures in the ocean off of Boston, 20 degrees warmer than normal off of the coast of Boston in the winter. And as that cold air hit then, that warmer water, that's really what led to that Gronkowski-like spike of snow that came down on us. It was a pretty simple phenomenon. And so obviously we're getting more concerned as our waters warm in terms of what the implications can be, because it was a there but for the grace of God situation that the storm that hit New Jersey and New York did not hit us. just 3 years ago. Can you discuss some of the forecasting challenges with extratropical transition and why it is hard to predict exactly when the changes from a tropical storm to something that looks more like a nor'easter will occur?
Yes, as Sandy and many other storms in the past have shown, it is in real time rather uncertain in many cases to forecast exactly when a tropical cyclone, a tropical storm, a hurricane, will lose its tropical characteristics. The reason that's difficult is that involves the changes in the inner core structure of a hurricane, and that is very difficult to forecast. The computer forecast models are getting better at forecasting that, but because that is so difficult, and because that kind of transition can happen near the coastline, after the dilemma we faced in Sandy going forward, we can continue to issue National Hurricane Center forecasts and advisories even after a hurricane has lost its tropical characteristics. We can maintain or issue tropical storm or hurricane watches and warnings, and we can do that also for the storm surge watches and warnings once they come operational in 2017 for a tropical system, a hurricane that loses its tropical characteristics. And in addition, for a purely extratropical situation, NOAA is taking a proactive approach in looking at all of the components of our agency that could bring to bear forecasts, products, and warnings for extratropical storm surge.
May I ask one final question? Chairman, thank you. And that is that in recent years, we've seen more landfalling storms in the Northeast, in the Mid-Atlantic, than we have in Florida. Can you talk about that phenomenon and what you think might be occurring?
Where the hurricanes go from year to year, from decade to decade, is a very chaotic system, and it is not very predictable at all. And we've had periods in the past, like the 1950s, that were very, very busy for East Coast, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeastern hurricanes, and then we saw what happened in 2004 and 2005 with Florida receiving an unprecedented back-to-back 4 hurricane impacts in each of those years. No one knows where this year's hurricanes are going to go, and I have not seen convincing research that tells us we can predict who is going to get more hurricane landfalls in the future. But I do know that for any of us, Texas to Maine, and places inland from the coast, that it is simply a matter of when, not if, the next tropical storm or hurricane brings wind, water, or both to your community worse than you've ever experienced. And so no one is off the hurricane hook this year or in future years.
Thank you for your good work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator.